Welcome to Aquasplainer. I'm still finding my feet making videos about aquascaping, but I have posted several shorts featuring my latest project, this 22-liter nanocube. Since posting them, I've had a few questions from viewers, so I thought I'd put together something bigger that looks at all the steps involved from start to finish. And also, I hope to give you some of the thinking behind that, which might be informative, for example, if you're starting a new tank and looking for ideas, or if you're looking for inspiration for your next aquascape. I've set it up into chapters, so you can quickly jump to any aspect of this that interests you. Just check out the description. First of all, something about the concept or the thinking behind this tank. Initially, what I wanted to do was create a new home for my betta fish, Biffy, who's currently in the biorb tube behind me. But after I started looking around for ideas and inspiration, the direction changed a little bit. And I decided I wanted to create a nanocube aquascape with nano fish, a nano cleanup crew, and also I wanted to try some new plants, experiment, discover new things along the way. I didn't want to do things I'd already tried before. I wanted to explore. One of the things I wanted to try out was the dirted tank approach. So that's something you'll find out about further into the video. At the same time, I wanted to keep everything practical and keep the costs down. There's a cost of living crisis going on, and spending lots of money on a new fish tank didn't seem like the right thing to do. But most of all, I wanted to try new things and learn from the experience. The outcome is this beautiful nanocube. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. It looks beautiful sitting here in my living room, and I often refer to it as a living light. Biffy's staying put for now, but we're going to build him a new home in our next project. Let's start in the most logical place with the glass. This is a tank that I actually had in the cupboard. I've owned it for a few years now. It's a Cyano Nexus 25. Definitely a budget model. I think you can pick one up online for about 55 or 60 pounds. It measures 29 by 29 by 29, and it holds about 22 liters. The glass is only 3 millimeters thick. Because it's so thin, there's very little refraction as the light passes through the glass, and that makes it very clear from that point of view. Of course, it being thin also makes it fairly fragile, so you have to be really careful if you're putting heavy rocks in there and things like that. It came with a plastic lid, which is useful because there's a cat around, and it has this white plastic base, which I think looks okay. It came with an LED light on a stalk that attaches to the base at the back, but that light was nowhere near powerful enough for a planted aquarium, so I'm using something else. It also came with a Cyano CF40 filter, and we'll have a look at that as well as the light a little bit further down the line. With this aquascape, I wanted to try a dirted tank approach. So instead of just planning into some gravel or buying a manufactured substrate or buying aqua soil to put underneath my substrate, I went out into the wild and I got some mud. The mud in this tank comes from a local canal. When they dredge the canal to make it deep enough for vessels to pass through, they often leave piles of mud on the bank. So I just scooped it up and brought it home for use in this aquascape. I put a 1-inch layer of mud at the bottom of the aquarium. You can't see it because it's covered in the sand at the moment. But the idea is that the mud comes from a living ecosystem in the canal. It comes packed with organic matter, and that basically turns into nutrients for the plants in a tank like this. The biofilm that's on the mud has spread onto all the surfaces in this aquarium, which help make it a healthy ecosystem. The mud also contains microorganisms, including the kind of bacteria that you need to break down organic waste, like fish poo, for example. These bacteria turn ammonia into nitrites, and then nitrites into nitrates. And having nitrates in your water is excellent if you want to grow healthy plants, as you can see here. Next, I'm going to talk about the sand at the bottom. I've never used sand as a substrate in an aquarium before, so this was new to me and all part of the experiment, I guess. The mud at the bottom is about 1 inch thick, and then there's a further inch of sand capping it off. The sand that I've used in this tank is play sand. You can buy it at your local DIY store. It only costs about £5 or £10 for 10 kilos. Play sand is non-toxic. It has to be if children are going to play in it. And that makes it safe for an aquarium. The layer of sand holds the mud down, and as the water filters it down through the sand, it allows the nutrients in the mud to diffuse throughout the water column, which is basically all this water from the sand all the way up to the top of the tank, gradually, which is important because you want the nutrients in that mud to last for a long time. One of the things I discovered about sand is that it's actually a lot easier to plant into sand than you might think. I always thought the sand would get washed around on the current, that it's very light. Actually, it is actually pretty heavy, and it sinks in around the roots when you plant something and quickly holds the plant in place. You can get white aquarium sand. It costs more, but I think the play sand that I've used here looks really natural. My approach with the hardscape really was to keep it simple. Sometimes you look at an aquascape and all you see is wood and rock. I wanted people to see a whole ecosystem, and I wanted my plants to come to the fore. So the hardscape here is for visual interest and for a little bit of structure. It's also definitely a plaything for the shrimps, snails, and fish to mess around with. I started off by buying 3 elephant skin rocks at the local aquatic center and a very interesting complex piece of azalea root. With the dimensions of my tank in mind, I started to experiment with different configurations using the rocks and the wood. I was thinking of a composition coming out of the back left of the tank and across to the front right. I tried different ways of connecting them, and I found I didn't really need 3 pieces of rock, just 2. Everything clicked together when I kind of made a sort of V-shaped configuration with the 2 rocks, and then was able to balance the wood sort of in the gap that's created towards the back between them. This was like quite a natural setup because the wood literally balanced on the rock. However, I did fix everything together using tiny little swabs of cotton wool pressed into the spots where the wood touches the rock, or where the rocks come together, and soaking that cotton wool with super glue. It's held fast, solid, and I think the structure, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but I do think the structure is a perfect platform for the plants, but also a great playground for the fish and invertebrates in the tank. Next, I'm going to talk about the plants. This is going to be a big section of the video because I did put a lot into planting this nanocube. 4 of the main plants in this tank were new to me. Bolbitis, Pearlweed, there's a Crinum bulb at the back, and the Frogbit that you can see floating at the top. Let's start with the Bolbitis heudelotii. This I've attached to the wood in the hardscape in 2 places towards the back of the aquarium. This is a rhizome plant, so you don't plant it in the substrate. You need to attach it to wood or rock. And I've done this using cotton thread, just a sort of beige colored cotton thread wrapped around the rhizome, which is like the stem at the bottom, which the leaves grow out of. I've done it carefully so that the thread goes in between each leaf stem, basically. I haven't tied it, but you can do it nice and subtly. With the plant secured to the wood, it's got these lovely dark green leaves that spread upwards. They're of an unusual shape, and I really think it is a lovely alternative to, say, for example, Java fern. I guess if there's a drawback when it comes to Bolbitis, it's that it grows quite slowly. And I think that's because it absorbs its nutrients from the water rather than from its roots. As it's attached to the wood, the roots don't go into the soil and gain nutrients that way. The second key species that I'm growing here is pearlweed. Now, I've never had much success with carpet plants in the past. This is a low-tech setup, which means there's no CO2 being injected into the water. And it's hard to find a hardy carpet plant that can survive without CO2 injection. The solution, I think, is pearlweed. It's what they call a bulletproof plant. Um, you can see it in the foreground here and around the side, more or less growing out of control. Alongside the Bolbitis, I bought 1 pack of pearlweed from Pro Shrimp, and I split it into 10 little clumps, which I planted in the sand to try and create a little bit of a foreground in this tank. At first, there was a little bit of melt and a little bit of fragmentation amongst those 10 segments of pearlweed that I planted at the beginning. But whenever a stem would come loose, I would plant it in the gaps in between to propagate and eventually thicken this kind of pearlweed colony here. Slowly but surely, it has taken over the tank. This tank has only been set up for about 3 months, and the plant has really established itself. I think it provides 3 things when we're talking about this ecosystem. First of all, it's a great filter for waste that might be in the water, fish waste and waste from the shrimps and things like that, as well as bits of organic material from other plants that sink to the bottom. It provides an excellent home for the shrimp. They're constantly in there feeding on the biofilm on its leaves, feeding on any of the waste that's trapped in there. Potentially they can breed in the safety of the pearlweed. And thirdly, it consumes CO2 that's produced by the fish and shrimps in the water. When it photosynthesizes, it turns that CO2 into oxygen, And now and again, you can see little bubbles coming up from the pearlweed into the water. The Latin name for pearlweed is Hemianthus micranthemoides, in case you want to look it up. The next, or the third plant that I wanted to talk to you about is a Crinum bulb called Crinum calamistratum. You might be able to see its long, crinkly fronds. I planted the bulb towards the back of the aquarium, kind of in between the two rocks, which form the main part of the hardscape, and it seems to be going quite well. The fronds grow up towards the surface, then kind of project themselves forward towards the front of the tank. I think it looks okay. I like the way they sometimes entangle themselves with the wooden parts of the hardscape. They kind of bring some visual interest. Certainly the shrimp and the Otocinclus in the tank love to scurry up and down the Crinum fronds, cleaning them and stuff. But they do kind of look a little bit thin and maybe a little bit chaotic to my mind. Every few weeks or so, I remove the longest Crinum fronds. I just think it helps keep the tank looking a little tidier. The final of the 4 key plants in my cube aquascape is Frogbit, or Limnobium laevigatum. This is the floating plant that you can see across the top at the surface of the water. I added this plant in about a month after starting the aquascape, just to bring a bit more variety to the habitat. Like the pearlweed, it's grown very quickly, and I think this could be down to the quality of the water, basically. I think it shows that nutrients from the mud are rising up through the sand and into the water column, enabling some of the plants to grow very quickly, particularly the frogbit and the pearlweed. Its roots, as you can see, they reach down into the water. Each main root has thousands of tiny little filaments on it, and these tend to capture bits of waste that are floating around in the water, and then either the plant consumes that waste itself, or the shrimps latch onto it and kind of harvest little morsels that they can eat from the frogbit roots. In that way, the frogbit forms part of the tank's natural filtration system. It breaks up the light a little bit. It also makes a wonderful playground for the shrimp that, as well as climbing up and down the roots, they love to hang upside down, feeding off the bottom of or the underside of the kind of like lily pad leaves that sit at the surface. Something else that's interesting about Frogbit is that it takes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere rather than from the water. So that leaves carbon dioxide in the water for the other plants to use when they photosynthesize. As for any oxygen it creates, I'm not sure whether that's expelled into the atmosphere or into the water. I just really don't know. I have to remove some frogbit from this tank every week, otherwise it would take up the entire surface of the water. The main thing with the frogbit is that it makes the tank look like a tiny little jungle, and that's what I love about it. There are a couple of other plant species that I purchased to put into this aquarium, but they're sort of a little bit more secondary, I guess. First of all, I got some Java moss, which I pushed into some of the little nooks and crannies and in between the branches and such on the on the hardscape, on the rock and on the wood. That grew really quickly at first. Again, I think the nutrients in the water have helped it. It's started to die away a little bit, so I took it all out, trimmed away the dead bits, and I've put it back in. You can mainly see it in the center. I think it's only just reestablishing itself on the main kind of branch sticking up. The other secondary plant that I brought in is Rotala rotifolia. So basically I did this because I had been hoping that the Bolbitis would fill in quite well as a background plant, but it's grown quite slowly. Instead of waiting, I bought some Rotala. I planted it near the back, just to the left of the heater, and it grew fairly quickly up to the surface. I cut the stems back again and replanted the cuttings into the sand. And so hopefully gradually the Rotala will help me fill the space in the background, and I won't have to worry so much about the Bolbitis growing so slowly. In total, I only purchased 6 plants to put into this nano cube. However, to get things going at the beginning, I did use a few cuttings from my other tanks. I got 2 pieces of Anubias, and I attached them to pebbles using cotton thread, and I placed these near the back on either side of the hardscape. Basically, I did this not so much to have more plants in the tank, but what I wanted to do was introduce some biofilm and some algae, which is sort of growing a little bit on the Anubias, which would accelerate my ability to bring in some snails and some shrimps. Another plant that I added from my existing tanks is Cryptocoryne. I planted some next to the rocks in the middle, but that has kind of been swamped by the Pearlweed. It's growing healthily, but you can't see it all that well, so perhaps there's not much point. But another one I planted back in the back left corner, where the sand is the deepest. I didn't really think of it as one that would become kind of like a background plant. I just popped it in there at the back corner as a bit of an experiment. It wasn't thriving in the tank it was in. It was just doing okay. But now it's really turned it around, and I would say it is thriving definitely here. The leaves are turning a rusty red color. I think it's benefiting from all the nutrients coming up from the dirt, from the mud underneath the sand. I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a crypt look so healthy. If you want to set up a planted tank, then a good light can be a game changer. When I first set this one up, I had a 7-watt clamp-on LED light, which was okay, but I sort of thought the plants were growing a little too slowly. So I did a bit of research, and I found this 14-watt LED aquarium light on eBay. It cost £30. It's made in China, and it's unbranded. It came in a box like this. It's perfect size. It's made for a 30-centimeter tank. The little feet sit on the edges of the glass there. You can move it back to focus on the plants at the back of the tank, or move it forward to illuminate the front. So basically, wherever your light hungriest plants are, you can try and situate the light closer to them. Like I said, it's unbranded. I think it's similar or perhaps exactly the same as the Higger or the Night Crew models that you might see on Amazon or eBay. It's got some really great features. There are 4 LED colors: white, red, green, and blue. And you can control the intensity of each of those areas of the spectrum separately. You can also set a timer, and it has a sunrise and sunset settings. So when the light comes on, it comes on gradually in the morning, and when it turns off gradually at night, going down in intensity by a few percent every minute or two. A lot of the advice out there suggests that you limit your lighting on a fish tank to 8 hours a day. Now, there's a good reason for that. It's because a lot of people have real problems with algae, and algae thrives when you leave the light on too much. I've actually gone a different route. I've set mine to illuminate for about 10 hours a day, but at a lower intensity. So the white and the green LEDs, I've set them to shine at a maximum of about 50%. And the red and the blue ones, I've set them to illuminate at 65%. The reason I put the red and blue at a higher percentage is because when they photosynthesize, most plants respond best to the red and the blue parts of the spectrum. Some people say that it gives this tank a slight purplish look. Um, Personally, I think it looks fine. Of course, another essential element in an aquascape is the actual aqua, the water. Now, because I have several established tanks already, when it comes to water, I had a head start. Um, Half the water that I put in when I started this tank came from one of my other healthy fish tanks, and the other half is tap water. The tap water I put through a Brita filter like this one. And then I added API stress coats to dechlorinate it. And I also use C-Chem neutral regulator to make sure it's not acidic or base. Some people say that using a Brita filter makes no difference. I actually think it does help. It reduces the amount of heavy metals and other contaminants in the water, and it also, in my opinion, softens the water. Since I've been using it, I've found I have far less of a problem with like limescale buildup here at the water line or around the filter area. I don't only do that with this tank, I do it with all my other tanks. All my tanks do have very clear water in them, so it seems to be working for me. If you're starting a tank from scratch and you don't have access to already cycled fish tank water, you'll need to use a product like C-Chem Stability, which will introduce bacteria into the water. It will take a few weeks for the bacteria to establish itself in the water and on the surfaces in the tank as well as in the filter. The filter and the heater, you can see them towards the back there. The filter's on the right and the heater's on the left. The heater is a interpret fixed temperature model. It's inexpensive and uncomplicated. You simply immerse it in the water, attach it to the glass with the suction cups, plug it in, and it heats the water to 25 degrees Celsius. Actually, I've put a thermometer in here, and it's usually read 26 degrees, but give or take. The filter is a Ciano CF40. I think I mentioned at the beginning that it came with the tank as part of the package. It's an internal filter submerged in the water. It has a jet tube nozzle to disperse the water as it pumps. It came with a charcoal pod in the column. I took this out because charcoal can kind of reduce the amount of nutrients in the water, and I wanted my plants to really benefit from all the nutrients that I put in through the mud that's underneath the substrate. It also came with a coarse sponge, so the water passes through the sponge and then up through the impeller. What I did was I also added in a fine sponge so that you have a coarse sponge, a fine sponge, then it goes through the impeller and out through the jet nozzle into the tank. That way, I can kind of reduce the amount of waste floating around in the tank. It helps keep the water clearer, but most importantly, the fine sponge helps slow how quickly the filter pumps the water. The problem with the Cyano CF40 is that it's not adjustable. So it pumps the water and it pumps it really quickly. I didn't want the filter blasting the sand everywhere when I first set up the tank, so I had to play around with the jet tube quite a bit. I had it shooting water into this side of the glass here. I had it shooting the water forwards to the front of the tank. It was blowing the sand around at the front before all these plants grew in. I put these stones here to try and break that, and I left them in. They actually have a couple of other purposes too. In the end, I've got the jet tube pointing towards the back, so the glass and the heater at the back of the tank are breaking the current. Um, Having said that, it is good to have some sort of flow, some sort of current going through your tank. It keeps the plants healthy, it moves things around, it ensures that materials get back to the filter and are taken out. And also, some of the plants, like the Bolbitis in particular, they do like to have a bit of current in their wild habitat in Africa. That's what they have. It helps them take nutrients from the water to have a current flowing across them. Now we get to the fun bit. Start talking about the fish and the invertebrates in the nanocube. Uh, I wanted this nanoscape to become a functioning ecosystem as quickly as possible. So I needed something to deal with the organic waste that's naturally produced by the plants as they grow. What I've done is I've assembled a natural cleanup crew. After the first week, I put in some bumblebee horn snails. I don't think you could see any right now, but they're basically a tiny version of a nerite snail. They're distinctive because they have a black and honey-colored stripe pattern on their shells, but also they've got little horns or spikes sticking up out of their backs. They look great. The only thing is, if you handle them, you've got to be careful not to break those spikes. They're definitely nano, tiny little things, and they eat algae, they eat biofilm, and they eat dead plant matter that falls to the bottom of the tank. After 2 weeks, I added some crustaceans, a couple of Sunkist orange shrimp. These are from the Neocaridina species. Like the snails, they eat algae and biofilm. They also eat mold. So early on, there was a little bit of mold growing on the wood, which is really common when you start an aquascape, and the shrimps kind of gobbled it up. The other thing they eat is poop. So there's a system for dealing with sewage. These two rocks here that you see at the front of the tank, they don't look great, I guess. They're not really there for aesthetic purposes. Other than that, they provide a little platform at the front where the shrimps and the snails can come and eat some algae in a position where I can observe them. So if you were wondering about those two pebbles. That's why they're getting overgrown now with this pearlweed. But you know, I'll cut it back and I'll be able to see them. The final part of my cleanup crew is a pair of Otocinclus negro. Now, they're smaller than regular ottos, and they don't have a black stripe down their side. Um, their name suggests that they might be black in coloration, but they're actually a dark kind of mottled brown color. They're very nano, they're very different, which I really like. I don't know if you'd be able to spot any right now, given the camera position, but basically they're like little tiny suckermouth fish that clean the glass. They love going on the wood surfaces. Some of the plant surfaces they really like as well, and they remove algae and biofilm and such. All the members of my cleanup crew are tiny little things. Like I said at the beginning, I wanted this to be all nano. That's why the betta fish was never introduced into this tank. All these little guys are doing a great job. There's no algae problem in this setup. Other than the Otocinclus that are part of the cleanup crew, there's only one fish species in this nanoscape. My feature fish, if you want to call it that, is the celestial pearl danio. There are only 6 of them in here, but they're very sprightly little things. They're not as shy as I expected. They certainly don't hide around at the back. You can see them venturing to the front all the time here while I'm talking. They're playful. You'll even see them carrying out mating behavior and laying eggs in the pearlweed. Unfortunately, the shrimp eat the eggs almost as soon as they're laid. When you get in close, you can see a speckled pattern on the sides of the celestial pearl danios, like a star map, really. So that's where they get their name. They're also called galaxy rasparas in some fish shops. Their fins are a sort of glowing orangey kind of crimson color, very beautiful and very fast moving. Something I was told about these fish when I was researching them was that they like to feed in the middle of the tank. I found that's not the case. They'll eat food that's floating on the surface. They'll eat food that's down at the bottom. I give the fish in this tank, the fish and shrimps in this tank, a varied diet that includes algae wafers, spirulina, insect pellets, and flaked food. The celestial pearl danios eat all of those things. So far, in terms of the fish in the tank, I've had no casualties. I think a couple of the shrimp might have died, but it's quite hard to do a survey with the plants doing so well and there being so many places to hide. So this is the last topic that I'm going to cover in this video. The tank has been set up for about 3 months now, and it's kind of developed a sort of varied maintenance schedule. The pearlweed and the frogbit, they need to be trimmed back about once every 2 weeks. I also do a partial water change of about 5 or 6 liters usually when I do that. The filter, that gets cleaned out about once a month. It doesn't get dirty really quickly, but it does, it does collect some of the plant cuttings and stuff like that over time. This tank isn't zero maintenance, but it is very easy to look after. There's no complex CO2 system to mess around with. It's a small tank, so no task looks too daunting at any time. And the water chemistry is very stable. Mostly it keeps itself pretty clean. We've reached the conclusion of today's video. It's covered a lot of ground, but I hope that you found the information useful and have found some inspiration and ideas and know-how for your own setups. I think in terms of what I set out to discover, the dirted tank method has really worked out. This is a I think this is a healthy nanocube that generally looks after itself. The fish and plants, they all appear to be doing well. I haven't spent loads of money setting it up, and yet I think it looks pretty good. I just want the background plants to fill in a bit more and to get a bit taller. Uh, and then I think I'll be completely satisfied. I really hope you've enjoyed watching the video. Thank you very much for watching Aquasplainer. If you like what you've seen, please hit the subscribe button, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.